Okay, everyone, good morning. Welcome to the morning briefing from the Celtic Way Friday. Not just any Friday, though, Tony. What Friday is it?
I believe it's a Good Friday, is it not? But hey.
Certainly feels like a Good Friday, given recent events, doesn't it?
So, if you're that way inclined, so be it. But I think a lot of Celtic supporters have woken up this morning thinking it's a Good Friday for a start, as you say, if you follow recent events.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come on and maybe discuss this kind of stuff. Just first of all, this video is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Tell us about this briefly, Tony.
Yes, this has been extended. This is a deal of £1 for 6 months of access if you subscribe. And you'll also get that wonderful Jota print from renowned football artists made by Frankie. So you've still got time left to pick up that deal. So if you subscribe, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's taken up that offer so far. But it's a worthwhile print. It's worth having. It's a cracking thing when you see it in real life. So yeah, hit the button, as they say.
Yeah. Okay, lovely to have you with us, everyone. The likes of Joe and David and Hazel and Charles and Thomas. I'm assuming you're all off work today. Although maybe some of you are still working. I don't know. I appreciate you spending a little bit of your Good Friday with us anyway. It was a great night of football last night. I mean, away from the obvious Rangers going out and having another trophyless season, what a night of Europa League action in terms of Ange getting through to the semis and Bodo Glimt, who Ange will face next in the semis, and that Man United game. Wow.
Yeah, the Man United game was superb, wasn't it? The ending to that. Bodo Glimt, the Wi-Fi password that put us out of the Europa Conference League. Suddenly that's not so bad. But yeah, Ange going back to the most freezing place in the world, I believe, to play football. So yeah, I mean, we were speaking off air just before we came on and we said how wonderful would it be if Ange Postecoglou won that trophy for Tottenham. I think, yes, there would be some words exchanged then with the bold Australian and the Tottenham supporters, wouldn't there? But yeah, it was just a brilliant night of football. As you say, if you watched the Rangers game and then tuned over to watch Manchester United, it was terrific finish, and then happened to catch the penalties as well of the Bodo Glimt and Blackstone game. So, it was just a wonderful night of drama. And it's great sitting back watching that with no real leanings, Hamish. I always say you can only support one club, so you can sit there back and not really care what happens. Maybe you'd a care on the Athletic Club.
Yeah, it was a Basque club that were getting my support last night. I can assure you of that, but I know the point you're making.
Yeah, so, but brilliant, and really looking forward to this weekend. I think there's a spring in the step of Celtic now, isn't there? And things happening both on and off the field, which we'll talk about over the course of this briefing.
It's interesting looking, just to touch final time on last night, looking at the teams that have made the semi-finals of the Europa League and also the Conference League, but to a greater extent the Europa League, and this is the first year where you don't get the Champions League teams dropping into the Europa League. Personally, I don't think that's a good move from UEFA. I'd like to see them change that, because I think that's great when the Champions League teams dropped in and it gave teams like Celtic a real opportunity. We're in a place at the moment where we obviously want to qualify for the Champions League, obviously, but with the greatest will in the world, we're not going to win the Champions League. And I'm looking at that Europa League teams like Bodo Glimt and Rangers and a few other teams, Lazio and teams like that, and you look at how we performed in the Champions League and you think you'd fancy a run in that Europa League, and the only way that's going to happen really in the current system is if we fail to qualify for the Champions League. So you know what I mean? I think they should bring that drop in back.
Yeah, and also I think you're based, there's recency bias there, right? So you're based not on the way Celtic performed this year in the Champions League, where you felt that you were a team that belonged at that level. But prior to that, you would have said Celtic were a second European top tier team, weren't you? Yeah. Fair enough with the record. So in the past few years, and you would have fancied your chances at having a tilt at that, of course. And that's the argument, isn't it? And Rangers have done very, very well in Europe recently. You cannot say they haven't. If it's some cracking runs, getting to the final a few years ago, quarter final this year as well, and beating some decent teams. So it's that level of competition. Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? As you say, everybody says you enter a competition to win it, but you're realistic enough to know that Celtic aren't going to win the Champions League. But you want to go as far as possible. But then you look at the Europa League and you think, Celtic could do a Seville. They could get to the final again, couldn't they, when you look at the calibre of teams? Because Manchester United and Tottenham are 14th and 15th, respectively, in the English Premier League, aren't they?
Yeah, they're struggling.
Yeah, they're struggling. So, and Bodo Glimt, Celtic already played them and were well beaten at the time. But, so you just look at that and you think, it is a kind of missed opportunity. And like you, I wasn't really a lover of teams being knocked out and dropping into another competition, but it gave it a level of excitement, Hamish, didn't it? But I'm an old European Cup round robin guy. You get knocked out, that's it. No second chances. But maybe that's where we differ on that, and it's maybe a different way of thinking too. I think if you lose in a competition, you lose. I didn't like that. Slid down to another competition and all that kind of stuff. But I get what you're saying.
It's just the one thing I'm craving as a Celtic fan. And to be honest, I'm not craving anything else really, because the period that we're going through at the moment and have been for like a decade is amazing. And we should enjoy every minute of it domestically. But the one thing I'm craving is a European run. And I'd love to see it. And maybe that just comes 1 year when we somehow don't qualify for the Champions League. But obviously it's too much of a... you're losing out on too much to not qualify for the Champions League. Like the money that's worth, I think, catapults the club clear of everything else in Scottish football even further. But it's an interesting topic. I want to move it on, Tony. There's unless you had one last comment to make.
Yeah, one last comment. If you're asking me, I want to be the Champions League all the time.
Yeah.
Get a chance and see what we get. And the last year's filled me with confidence and hope that we can maybe improve on that next season.
Yeah. Okay. Greg Taylor chat, is that the big stuff from yesterday? Celtic stepping up their efforts to keep Greg Taylor up in the ante was the phrase that was used. Talk is we want to give him a significant wage rise and give him a contract until 2028. Brendan Rodgers seemed a bit different after the game on Saturday when asked about Greg Taylor. I think he made the comment, I'm never going to give up, basically. So do you think something's going on here?
Without a doubt. I think they've realised they need quality cover for Kieran Tierney coming back. Greg Taylor fits that bill. You can argue the toss about Greg Taylor. He's been a wonderful servant for Celtic. He's been a terrific player, and nobody understands that inverted fullback role more than Greg Taylor. He is another midfielder, and his range of passing's excellent at times. Yeah, does he get targeted sometimes with high ball and high press? We get all that, but every defender gets put under pressure. But I don't think that. I don't think the boys let Celtic down whenever he's on the park to play. Has he been a 9 out of 10 player every week he's played? No, he hasn't. But I tell you what, he's been a wonderful servant, a cracking player, and you make the point, and I made the point as well. We've made the point, spoken about it. You only truly realise what you have when you lose it. And I think the prospect of losing Greg Taylor just now, because he's still quite young, isn't he? He's still got his
27.
prime. Yeah, still got his prime years ahead of him. So, and I think they would be best served at Celtic. I don't think he'd be looking for the earth, but I think he's earned a wage rise at Celtic. And, again, talking about recency bias, Jeffrey Schlupp came in and he looked the part, didn't he, initially?
Yeah.
And he's kind of tailed off a wee bit, and then Greg Taylor's came back in and played really, really well. And the manager talks about it. He invests in players, but he also invests in people, and he calls him a consummate pro. And those quotes alone, Hamish, I'll never give up on it. Greg, I think Brendan Rodgers has forced a hand on this, or forced to issue and said, do we really want to let this guy go? And then there was all sort of murmurings about him signing for the club on the other side of the city.
I think it's his agent putting a wee thing out there.
It doesn't really matter what it is, but I tell you what, the one winner out of this could be Greg Taylor, who sat back. He's not commented. He's come into that team and he's played his heart out like he has for 6 years. He divides opinion. I get that. There's those that love Greg Taylor and there's those that still don't think he's Celtic class, whatever that phrase means. Hamish, if you play for Celtic, you're Celtic class, in my opinion. You might not make the grade per se, and there's a parting of the ways. But if you play for that football club, then you're undoubtedly talented. And Greg Taylor's been for 6 years, and he's undoubtedly talented and played very well for the club. So I just think that the manager has maybe had a look at this and thought, do you know what, this boy would be best served staying where he is. And if he gets a rise, I think he's deserved it. I have to be honest. And we can pick faults in his game and all that, but sometimes you have to accentuate the positives with Greg Taylor, which probably don't get accentuated enough.
And the positives are that he's clearly by Scottish football standards a very good left back. I mean, he's one of the top left backs in the league. You see that on Saturday when we're playing in games like Kilmarnock at home, crowded defence, etc. He's actually like another playmaker for us. He's a very important player in those games. The issue with Greg Taylor, I think a lot of people have had, is stepping up and into the European matches and maybe the derbies at times as well. He's been targeted at times in those games. But the thing is that the plan wouldn't probably be for him to play those games next year. If Kieran Tierney's fit, he would play. And Greg Taylor is a backup, if he is a backup. And I don't like using that phrase because he'd get plenty of game time. But I mean, Tierney and Taylor would be pretty well stocked at left back.
Terrific, Hamish. That'd be really good, wouldn't it? And also, Kieran Tierney's game time would need to be managed until things when we can turn around and say, right, you're ready to rock for 10, 15, 20 games on the spin. And as long as it's being couched that way to Greg Taylor, and if Greg Taylor's happy with that, then there's no reason for him not to commit himself to another deal. No, I think this is just about financial security, isn't it? Because he's just had him and his wife have just had their first child, wee Ruby, as we all saw the other week when he brought her onto the park, which was a wonderful moment. I thought it was great. So he's looking after himself as well, and he's perfectly entitled to do that because his contract is running down. But as we'll watch with Kyogo, sometimes the grass isn't greener, and I think maybe Brendan Rodgers has got into his head a wee bit there and saying, look, what's the problem here, and maybe got everybody around the table and said, look, this can be resolved, because you're talking a few £1,000, aren't you, by the sounds of it? Do
you think? I mean, is money the issue here, or do you think it? I mean, you're looking at Greg Taylor, and he's been our first choice for 4 or 5 years, and now he sees Kieran Tierney coming in, who he plays back up with Scotland, and he'll know his game time's going to go down, and he's not going to be first choice. I mean, is that not part of it? Like, kind of looking at Greg Taylor and asking him the question: Are you happy to no longer be the first choice? You're still going to play a lot of games. I mean, we're going to play probably 60 matches, something like that next year, maybe not quite that.
Yeah, that's how it has to be pitched to him. That if Kieran Tierney's fit, he plays, and he will play in the big games, but I will need you. And bearing in mind that I say this all the time, the players are handsomely remunerated, Hamish. It's only when you're comparing it to bigger leagues they turn around and say, but Celtic have a wage structure, which they've always had, but Greg Taylor will be handsomely remunerated. And so if he gets another new contract, then that wage will go up. So the manager says to him, look, we'll look after you, but understand your role here. And if you're happy with that and it ticks all the boxes, then why leave? Because you are onto a good thing here, and and if you want to go and chase money, I don't think Greg Taylor's that kind of player, but he'll maybe want to see if there's anything out there. and if you want to go and chase money, then there's the door. But he doesn't strike me as being a person he's not agitated for a move. His contract, and Brendan Rodgers has been asked about it all along the line. And the vibe you get from Brendan Rodgers is this player will stay, but we maybe need to, concede a wee bit of ground financially because he's been a cracking player. He's had a cracking attitude. He's been very professional and all of the above. So yeah, I would like to see him stay because I would like to see him. And as I said earlier, I was thinking that they should ask Sloop the question as well because he stepped up in Munich too and played very, very well. Stuff like that. But I think maybe his age is counting against him, Jeffrey Sloop, for a start. And if you can get Greg Taylor on a new deal, then because I think it was taken as read that Taylor was going to leave, so I think that's why the kind of juggernaut for offer Sloop a deal came in. But there seems to have been some kind of ground conceded here, and it looks like Taylor might stay. We'll get more on that today. The manager will clearly speak about that to stay. About Greg Taylor's contract situation. Yeah. Sure he'll speak about that when he addresses the media at 1:30 today.
Because he's away from what he does on the pitch. Greg Taylor's a really big figure in that dressing room. He's one of the loudest people, yes, I think, in that dressing room. One of the driving forces in recent years. And he ticks the homegrown box as well. But more than that, he's been at Celtic. He's been at Celtic for like as long as Kieran Tierney was, which is kind of weird to get your head around. But the two of them have real experience, and having both of them at the club next year, guys who can work with McGregor and James Forrest and guys like Alistair Johnson and really drive the standards. They know what Celtic are about, and they know how important it is to win at Celtic. And I think when you have tough moments in the season, having guys who have been through it previously is very important. So I've always kind of stood up for Greg Taylor. I like Greg Taylor. I think he's been a really good player for Celtic. I think he has his limitations. I wouldn't want him starting in the Champions League next season, but ideally the plan would be that Kieran Tierney would start. So I think having Tierney and Taylor as our left backs, 100% sign me up for that. And it might be harsh on Sloop because I've quite liked Sloop so far, but Taylor has more going for him, I think.
Yeah, and I think the manager sees that too, Hamish. He places a lot of emphasis and trust in what players do at training, etc., etc. But he's all over everything, and he sees the kind of player Greg Taylor is. He's never tired of telling you, So it's I think it's just more than his footballing ability. I think it's that culture in the dressing room that Brendan Rodgers has brought in and instilled, and Greg Taylor has brought into that big time. And as you say, he is a big voice in that dressing room. He's a big character, and you take that away. It's there's a part of your jigsaw missing. It's not easy to replace, and there's a comment there that Sloop's 32 and Taylor's 27, so he's got that on his side from Big Dom. Yeah, Taylor's got relative youth on his side, hasn't he? A few more years certainly. So when you weigh these things up, then it's fine. I just think that, as I say, everybody thought that it was an inevitability that Taylor would be leaving. But in the past couple of weeks, there's been a sea change. So something has happened, and talks have been going on, and obviously, which led to the story breaking yesterday that, he could be in line for a pay deal, a different paid contract, and there's the impasse has been broken, and it could lead to good news. So here's hoping that is the case.
Good stuff. The dogs.
Right on cue, yeah. They're up for that too.
Amazing. Okay, that's a great Taylor chat. A few comments we've got, and actually I'll just go through them before we move on. Des saying, I'm glad they at least made Taylor an offer. Whatever he decides, he deserves the offer. My ball GT is a great ambassador for Celtic FC, great charity work, an all-round good guy. We've also got Big Dom asking if Taylor's preferred over Sloop. I guess he would be at this stage. So yeah, that's the Greg Taylor situation. As you say, Brendan Rodgers will be asked about it today, I'm pretty sure. So we'll see what happens there. The other story I just wanted to chat about was one that, to be honest, hadn't come across, but it's on our website. And it's bound to be one that gets people chatting in the comments, Tony, because if there's one thing as football fans we don't like, it's potentially being ripped off and charged more. And the news is, perhaps unsurprisingly, Dundee United have put prices up for next Saturday and the title party. The numbers are, a previous visit to Tannadice was £34 for a ticket.
Yep.
The game next Saturday is going to be £42. So that's up £8. I don't know what percentage that is. I reckon it's like a 25% hike. £25 for concession tickets. Dundee United, this is according to the Courier, Dundee United saying it's due to additional policing and stewarding costs, which is, if you're going to hike up the prices, just be honest and just say, okay, it's a big game, we can get away with charging a wee bit more, we want to make a bit of money. It's not going to, ease everyone's frustrations or concerns, but at least you'd be being honest about it, because that's the story here, isn't it? They know that it's a big game. They know Celtic fans just would pay anything to be there, basically. So they're charging a good bit more as a result.
Yeah, why, as you say, why not be honest? Why not call it what it is? Fleecing the Celtic supporters tax, which is what they're doing. And the Celtic supporters will turn up anyway, regardless of the price, Hamish, they will pay it. And well done to them for that. But I think that's an astonishing hike. You can call it policing, stewarding and additional policing, additional stewarding, call it what you like, but £42 from 34 in the previous game, I think that's scandalous. But
the other, just quickly, Tony, the other thing, because Plunge is asking here, is it the same for United fans? It is. I think the rule here is that it has to be. So Dundee United are charging their own fans either £42 or £40, depending on whether they're in the upper or lower pricing bracket for adults. So they're not only Celtic fans, they're actually charging their own fans this amount.
Yeah. So listen, everybody who's going to that stadium on that day will pay, an added surcharge on their ticket. Is it fair? It's probably not, because football supporters are asked to pay and shell out a hell of a lot of money throughout the season. And, I can understand, because it's a big game and there's going to be a big crowd, but my goodness, one more time, just ring the Celtic fans for, what they think they can get out of them. And they know fine well there'll be a clamour for tickets for that from the Celtic fans. So, as I say, they will pay it. Is it right? No, it's not right, but Celtic can't dictate what prices Dundee United charge for. And I think it'd be even more unpalatable if they didn't do it for their own supporters, but they're doing it for their own supporters as well. So I
think that's the rule, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they feel about that as well. But, I just think it's a scandal, to be honest. I think everybody that would want a ticket for that should get a ticket for that, but prices like that can price some people out of it, Hamish, because that is a hell of a lot of money to pay for entry to a Scottish Premiership football match, I have to say.
Yeah. Okay, that's really the story, everyone. So I don't want to spend too much longer chatting about it. I don't agree with it. I know Pete's chatting about flight prices going up, and that's more than 25% when they put them up. But I really, really don't agree with that. But airlines are often immoral. I think some of the things airlines do in terms of selling over, what is it? They oversell seats, don't they? They overbook planes and hope that people drop out. So I wouldn't be looking at airlines to be the bastions of morality here. But regards to Dundee United, not great. But I guess a lot of clubs would probably do it. And yeah, grand scheme of things, you're going to have a full Celtic end there. What else we got? We got press conferences today, Tony.
Yeah, got a big game on Sunday, Hamish.
Oh, do we? That's good.
Yeah, the Scottish Cup semi-final against St Johnstone. I've been speaking to various people about that during the week. One of them is the legend that is Lubomir Moravchik. He was talking about winning the treble and stuff like that. So I put a link to the day upstage Henrik Larsson at Ibrox. You can have a wee read at that. He's a nice wee jokey one-liner that he comes away with on the tremendous kind of stuff. But yeah, I think, as I said at the top of the programme, there's a spring and a step now for Celtic heading into the weekend. You know, the treble is certainly doable. You have to go and turn up at Hampden, and they usually do turn up at Hampden. And, you know, Moravchik was also making the point that he saw the last game against St Johnstone, said Celtic weren't very good, but he doesn't see lightning strike twice against St Johnstone. He doesn't see them beating Celtic twice in a week. And he says that Hampden Celtic usually turn up, and I tend to agree with him on that. In the big games, Celtic have that mentality and they usually turn up. So I agree with the legend that is Lubo. I'll put the other story in as well, where he's talking about that Martin O'Neill treble team and how he reckons that treble team could have played in any league in Europe, Hamish, and certainly held their own in the English Premiership at that time. And I have to say, I agree with him totally, because that was a wonderfully gifted team. And I said one of the highlights was that Ibrox 3-0 game when Henrik Larsson scored his 50th goal of the season and Lubo scored twice. So have a wee look at that, guys, if you're interested. It's great stuff. It's always great to talk to somebody like that who was, and by far and away, alongside Henrik Larsson, the best 980 grand that Celtic ever spent. 980 grand for the two of them, Hamish. 650,000 and 330,000, not even £1 million. And that are the two best buys in Scottish football history. Have to be.
It's one of my kind of big, another regret. I'm coming away with Celtic regrets today, never getting to see Lubo, because my dad, I think he was like my dad's, well, not his favourite player, because I think Henrik was probably everyone's favourite player, but my dad said he was just incredible to watch. He always talks about the day he controlled the ball with his backside, and talks about that. And I never got to see Lubo, but I did get Nakamura, so I think I got a glimpse of a genius at Celtic Park and got to enjoy him.
Yeah, and you know, the genius is the word. You know, he you know, you've got Henrik Larsson, Monica, the King of Kings, and Lubomir Moravchik's a gift from God. Those two.
Who came up with those? I was thinking about Larsson recently. Like who came up with that? Was it just a thing at the time?
I think it's just a thing at the time. Yeah, just don't know who came up with it, to be honest. But my goodness, if the cap fits, you know, and even players who played in that Martin O'Neill team, you know, when Lubo turned up under Joe Venglos, they were like, "Who is this guy?" The most natural two-footed player they'd ever seen. Zidane said he was the best number 10 that he'd ever seen. And that's a hell of a compliment, you know what I mean? He's just like, you know, and Martin O'Neill was just like, this guy's a genius, as you say. And even the late, great Bertie Auld said, you know, and talk about the best player out with the Lisbon Lions. He says everybody will naturally migrate towards Henrik Larsson, but for Bertie Auld, it was Lubo. So that, you know, praise like that doesn't come along often. So it's always great to talk to guys like that and get their insight and how to win trebles and stuff like that. He was like, yep, Celtic will beat St Johnstone. Who did he play in the final? He's like, he was fast forwarding to the final, and I went, Aberdeen or Hearts. Oh yes, they'll take care of them as well. And he was very knowledgeable, because he was like, Hearts haven't made the top 6. He said, in Aberdeen are always the kind of made.
I think he watches games. I'm pretty sure, because I spoke to him a couple of years ago, actually after we won the league at Tannadice the next day, and I'm pretty sure he goes out, certainly for the big games, somewhere. Is he in Slovakia still? He goes and watches the games there somewhere.
Yeah. And I believe he's coming to Glasgow next month as well to do another podcast to host these nights regularly. And I think Lubomir's one of the guests, so some people might be going along to that. But yeah, I mean, as I say, it's one of the perks and privileges of your job where you can get to actually talk to these guys. And it's just wonderful to hear what they think. But, you know, and the kind of mechanics and machinations behind winning a treble. You know, and he was saying he would love he just said Brendan Rodgers is an incredible manager, because this will be like the third treble he has won, or he could win as a manager. You know, first 2 seasons he already won back-to-back trebles, and you know, it's incredible consistency. And he said when they did it under O'Neill, that was only the third treble in Celtic's history. his first treble since 1969.
What are we going for this year? Is it 9 this
The
year?
9th treble, yeah. So he was saying that,
Ridiculous.
and that's all kind of since Brendan Rodgers came in.
Yeah.
That kind of bar was set.
It's so obvious. I mean, when Brendan Rodgers came into the club, we've gone from a team who won doubles some seasons, and doubles were viewed as a good season. Doubles now, and Alistair Johnson touched on this earlier in the year, doubles now at Celtic are almost like, God, we missed out on the treble, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but that's where we are, and got another chance on Sunday.
And Rodgers references it a lot. Talks about losing that League Cup to Kilmarnock, that League Cup game.
Yeah.
You know, and he made a point of saying he wanted all the trophies back, all our trophies back. I think he said at one point, like Celtic have a monopoly on them. They certainly have had in recent years, you know, under his watch as well. So I think it's he usually has the PowerPoint presentation, what he expects at the start of the season with the players. And I'm sure that would have been high up on the list. They won the treble. Not as a given, but on the list. And then advancing in Europe. So I think, so Liverpool was great, just sort of talking about that. So if you want to have a read of that guy, he's great. But I'm really looking forward to the weekend. I think it's full steam ahead now, isn't it, for Celtic, hopefully.
Yeah, Tony speaking to Lubomir Moravchik on the website now, everyone, so get involved there. They've been busy, the team, this week, because Ryan spoke to Chris Julian earlier in the week. I know there's also a number of other ones you've got lined up for the coming weeks. I'm forbidden from saying any names, but they're people you certainly have heard of. So it's all happening on the website.
Yeah, Stirling Petrov as well spoke to him too. And, so it's been a good week Celtic wise in terms of content. Hopefully on the site, and people hopefully have enjoyed that. And as you say, there's more to come. Just you're at the mercy of people lifting phones or responding to emails or whatever, requests. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's always great when they fall your way, chips fall your way, and you manage to speak to these people, because they're great. They never forget, the time at Celtic and what they achieved, and they always love talking about it, but giving you an insight into how they went about their business during, said successful seasons. Always good to hear.
Yeah. Okay. They're working hard. We're all working hard. You're all working hard. Maybe not today, but I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a lovely Easter weekend. And hopefully Celtic cap it all off on Sunday by making it to the Scottish Cup final. Remember, the first semi-final between Hearts and Aberdeen's tomorrow lunchtime, so I'll certainly be tuning in to watch that as well. Plenty more on the website over the next couple of days ahead of the game. Plenty more on YouTube as well. Plenty of coverage of the game on Sunday. I will return on Monday to look back on it all. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely weekend.